The match Alex Eala should have lost twice, and why that's the scariest part. 14 aces to 4. 10 winners to 25. If I told you those were the stat lines from 2 matches, you would guess the player with the smaller numbers lost both. She didn't lose either one. In fact, she beat an Olympic gold medalist on one day and a defending champion on the next, while getting outgunned in the exact category that's supposed to decide a tennis match. So here's the real question, the one nobody in tennis wants to say out loud yet. What happens when a 21-year-old who was famous for brilliant one-off upsets suddenly stops needing a perfect day to win? Because that's not a hot streak. That's a different player. And if you stick around, I'm going to walk you through the 2 matches that just forced the entire WTA Tour to rewrite its scouting report on Alex Eala. Shot by shot, game by game, right up to the moment her opponents ran out of answers. Before we get into it, if you want more breakdowns like this, real stats, real context, no hype for the sake of hype, hit subscribe now because this story is only getting started. Let's set the scene. Washington, D.C., the Mubadala Citi DC Open, one of the last big hardcourt tune-ups before the US Open. Alex Eala walks in ranked world number 28, already the highest-ranked tennis player in Philippine history, already the first Filipino to crack the WTA top 30. Not bad for someone who was ranked 140th in the world barely a year earlier. Trained since she was 13 at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Eala had already built a reputation as one of the most dangerous floor-level threats in the sport, somebody capable of beating anyone on her day. The problem was always the phrase "on her day," because what happens on the days that aren't perfect? Tuesday afternoon, first round. Her opponent, Zheng Qinwen of China, former world number 4, reigning Olympic gold medalist from Paris 2024, one of the biggest serves in the women's game. And this wasn't a clean slate 3 years earlier. At the 2023 Asian Games in Hangzhou, Zheng had beaten Eala in a 3-set semifinal on her way to the gold medal. Eala had unfinished business, and for a set and a half it looked like nothing had changed. Zheng's serve was a wrecking ball. She finished the match with 14 aces. Eala managed 4, and all 4 came in the first set, meaning for long stretches she had almost nothing free coming off her own racket. Zheng took the first set 6-4. Then, in the second, Eala found herself down a break, staring at a scoreline that could have ended the match right there. Here's where you need to pay attention, because this is the part that should make every player left in the draw nervous. Eala didn't panic. She didn't try to out-hit Zheng. You cannot out-ace 14 aces. Instead, she extended rallies. She made Zheng generate her own offense instead of collecting free points. And slowly, the match started to bend. Eala broke back. She built momentum. By the time the dust settled, she had won 9 of the final 10 games of the match, closing it out 4-6, 6-4, 6-1 in 2 hours and 26 minutes. Zheng, for all 14 of those aces, finished with 46 unforced errors. Eala had turned a shootout into a war of attrition, and won the war. That's one number. Now here comes the second one, and it might be even more revealing. Less than 24 hours later, no rest, fresh off a 2.5-hour battle, Eala walked back onto the court to face Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of the tournament, a former US Open finalist, a left-hander which strips away a lot of the patterns Eala usually relies on against right-handed opponents. And Fernandez had history on her side too. Just months earlier in Stuttgart, she had beaten Eala in straight sets, 6-1, 6-4, a performance that was clinical from start to finish. This time, the numbers told an even stranger story. Fernandez hit 25 winners. Eala hit 10, 15 fewer. In a sport where a winner means a shot the opponent simply cannot touch, that's not a close gap. That's a player getting outplayed in the highlight reel department by a wide margin. And Eala won anyway. Straight sets. 6-2, 7-6, 1. How does that even happen? Look at the other side of the stat sheet. In the opening set alone, Fernandez committed 14 unforced errors. By the end of the match, that number had ballooned to 42. Eala wasn't trying to match Fernandez shot for shot. She was doing something quieter and, honestly, harder to defend against. She kept the ball in play, kept the pressure on, and let Fernandez's own aggression become the thing that beat her. But here's the moment that should give you chills if you actually watched it. Midway through the second set, Fernandez surged. She won 5 straight games and grabbed a 5-1 lead. One more game and this match goes to a decider. The crowd was loud, the wind was picking up, and Eala was running on fumes from the day before. This is exactly the kind of moment where the old version of her story would have ended. A spectacular first set undone by a spectacular collapse. Instead, Eala won the next 5 games in a row. 5-1 became 6-5. Fernandez managed to hold and force a tiebreak. But by then, something had shifted. Eala raced out to an early lead in the breaker and closed it out 7-1, sealing the match in 1 hour and 53 minutes with 2 clean forehand winners on the final 2 points. Put those 2 matches side by side for a second. Against Zheng, Eala got beaten in the ace column by 10. Against Fernandez, she got beaten in the winners column by 15. 2 of the most direct ways a player can be outgunned on a tennis court, and she absorbed both on back-to-back days against 2 different champions with 2 completely different styles. Now, does this prove Alex Eala belongs in the top 10 right now? No, nobody's claiming that. But it proves something the numbers alone can't fake. A rising floor. Because here's the truth about elite tennis that casual fans rarely hear said out loud. The gap between a dangerous player and a truly great one isn't the ceiling. Almost anyone ranked in the top 50 can produce one unbelievable performance. The gap is what happens on the days when the serve isn't landing, when the forehand feels a half step slow, when the opponent is the one hitting the highlight reel winners. Can you still find a way? That's the real test. And this week, twice, Eala passed it. After beating Zheng, Eala explained it herself. She said the mindset had always been part of her, but that a year of experience at the higher levels had given her more tools to actually execute it under pressure. That's not a throwaway quote. That statement lines up exactly with what the stat sheet shows. She's not claiming pressure disappeared. She's claiming she now has more answers when it shows up. And it's not just this week talking. Rewind to Wimbledon just a few weeks earlier. Center court. The opponent. Defending champion Iga Świątek. Eala won a brutal opening set tiebreak 7-6, 9, then closed it out 6-2, becoming the first Filipino player, male or female, to reach the 4th round of a Grand Slam in the Open era. She actually broke a record that had stood since the amateur era of Philippine tennis, going back more than 70 years. She'd go on to lose a tight 4-setter to Jasmine Paolini in the next round. But by then the damage to the record books was already done. That Wimbledon run didn't come out of nowhere either. During that same grass court stretch, Eala also beat former Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina and knocked off Alina Svitolina, then the world's number 8. In the quarterfinals in Berlin, different surfaces, different opponents, different styles of pressure, same result. So let's talk about the man who might be the most credible voice on this. Andy Roddick, former world number 1, US Open champion, said something recently that's worth repeating. He said Eala's rise had stopped being just a fun story and had become, in his words, a genuinely real phenomenon that people should embrace while it's happening. Coming from someone who's actually won a major, that's not a small endorsement. And it's not just the analysts paying attention. It's the ticket office. The tournament chairman in Washington said that over the past month, roughly 80% of ticket inquiries were people asking specifically when Eala would be playing. 80%. At a combined ATP and WTA event stacked with established American stars. That's the kind of number tournament directors dream about. When Eala was asked what it felt like to have that level of global attention on her, she flipped the question. She said the more interesting question was what it felt like to simply be Filipino, and then she thanked the crowd in Tagalog. Because this isn't just about one player's ranking anymore. Fans are showing up, some for the first time in their lives at a professional tennis event, because of what she represents. Here's the part of the story that's still unwritten, though, and it's the reason you should keep watching her career unfold. For all of this, the wins over Olympic champions, the wins over Grand Slam winners, the run to the second week at Wimbledon, there's one box that's still empty. Alex Eala has never won a full WTA Tour-level title. She's won at the WTA 125 level, in Birmingham and Guadalajara. She reached a tour-level final at Eastbourne and came within 2 points of the trophy, and didn't close it. That's the next question the sport is waiting to see answered. Can this same discipline, the patience, the willingness to survive an ugly set, The refusal to fold when the stat sheet says she should be losing. Show up in a final when the finish line is actually visible. Can she protect this new, higher floor when the stakes stop being about survival and start being about the trophy itself? Nobody knows yet. But here's what we do know. For 2 straight years, the scouting report on Alex Eala was simple. Stay close, extend the rallies, and wait for the brilliance to run out. That plan worked often enough to give her a career full of jaw-dropping wins and painfully early exits. This week in Washington showed the cracks in that plan. Because what do you do when the brilliance runs out? And she still doesn't leave. 14 aces to 4. 10 winners to 25. 2 champions beaten in 2 days. Not because Alex Eala controlled every statistic on the page, because she controlled the only ones that actually mattered when the match was on the line. This might not be the end of her story. It might just be the moment the story changed. And if you want to be here for whatever comes next, the good runs, the tough losses, the numbers that tell the real story before the headlines catch up, subscribe now because we're not going anywhere.